Updated May 6, 2018, 0 hours 48 minutes and 15 seconds. It's not difficult to pinpoint the moment the Newcastle Jets knew they were beaten. When the heartbreaking realization arrived, it came flying in. Studs recklessly and intentionally raised to horrifically collect man of the match Lawrence Thomas in the jaw. Ray O'Donovan's egregious, utterly sickening assault on the Melbourne Victory keeper was a terrible way for the Jets to end an inspiring season of rediscovery. Newcastle and its fans deserved more, to at the very least lose with dignity. Instead, the Jets were left looking helpless, desperate and completely overcome with frustration. And even though he would have been concerned for the welfare of his keeper, Kevin Muscat would have seen the Jets' frustration and smiled. In both the semi-final in Sydney and the final in Newcastle, Victory became masters of crashing the party, of rocking up unannounced to break some furniture and steal some drinks. It was rarely pretty, but it was expertly calculated and executed brilliantly. This grand final pitted two counter-attacking teams against each other in a meeting of styles that unsurprisingly led to a pretty ugly game, but one that suited Victory far more than their highly fancied opponents. The Jets found success this season through their use of space, quick transitions and the ability to counter with devastating pace. Some would have looked at their 65% possession at halftime as a sign things were going well, but it rather reflected the fact they were being forced to play a little differently than they might prefer. Having nabbed that early, controversial goal, Victory were content to sit deep and let the excellent James Donachie and Thomas Deng deal with the threat in front of them, rather than scrambling to balls behind them. When Ronald Vargas and Riley McGree did force the odd opening, Thomas was inevitably there to further convince onlookers he is indeed the league's best goalkeeper. A second half of determined midfield pressing and begrudgingly impressive game management, coach speak for time wasting, buying free kicks and professional fouling, of course, drained belief from an increasingly overwhelmed Newcastle. On the rare occasion the Jets had any space to attack, their midfield spark had deserted them, with Vargas withdrawn early and Steven Ugrkovic well held. Victory have played variations of this game all season, especially in the time before Mark Milligan left the club, and though it's unlikely to be effective over the course of an entire season, hence them finishing fourth, this plan is perfectly suited to beating better teams in the one-off contests the A-League finals provide. Of course, as in most football matches, there were extenuating circumstances, and it should come as a surprise to absolutely nobody that VAR was made to look foolish in another high-profile A-League game. Donachie was clearly offside in the build-up to Costa Barbaros's winner, and the goal should not have stood. The linesman should have seen it live, and the man in the VAR box should definitely have pushed his big red button to rule it out, having seen the replay. Newcastle deserves an explanation from the A-League as to why the goal was allowed to count, but at the heart of the issue is the main flaw of the VAR. It's just another human making a decision, and humans make errors. There's no question the goal had an impact on the way the rest of the game was played. Victory had no incentive to stretch themselves from then on, while the Jets probably felt obliged to press onto the front foot and play in ways that were somewhat foreign to them. If VAR works, we have a different game. But that's football, with or without the addition of technology. Random occurrences change games, and from there it's down to players and coaches to find solutions to on-field problems. Newcastle, like Sydney before it, found itself unable to adapt to the situation presented to it by a determined Melbourne Victory side. The Jets succumbed to frustration when cooler heads simply needed to prevail. The game's standout player was in a Victory shirt, while some of the Jets' stars were below their best. A turbulent A-League season didn't exactly get the showpiece event many were hoping for, but instead got a football match in its rawest form, with a wily coach, a fully committed team, some surprise, some outrage and more than a hint of controversy. For this Melbourne Victory, that is pretty much the perfect recipe. Topics: A-League, Soccer, Sport, Newcastle 2300, NSW, Australia. First posted May 5, 2018, 23 hours 50 minutes and 42 seconds.